Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Modern Spiritualist. My name is Raheem. Today we're going to continue with the Elemental Manifestation series. This is part 2. This is the Earth. Okay, so the Earth. It's the one that people tend to, want to skip over the most because it's the least sexy and it's, the most fundamental, one of the most important. Because it's not just about the work, and there is an aspect with Earth of putting in the work, but then there's also this aspect of patience, of community, of trust, of not knowing, being in the unknown, and all of that is very, very scary for us collectively right now, all of those ideas, and those are all kinds of things that the Earth tries to teach us how to be more comfortable with. So let's see where I want to start here. So we just finished off with air. Now air is kind of going into the Earth, right? And if you kind of consider this like a rotation, because in actuality all these elements are kind of working together and supporting each other all the time. So it's while we're doing this, while I'm kind of sequencing this linearly, in terms of there is kind of a path to follow here, like I said last week, each one's kind of blending into the other and reinforcing the other. And so as we leave air and go into Earth, it's not like air disappears, right? Air kind of being the vision, right? The seed of intention is key here, because that seed of intention that you're speaking from the air is basically falling from the sky, falling from that high point, that vantage point, right? Right into the Earth where it's just going to start rooting and planting. And the scariest thing about that is you can't see it, right? You just have to trust that it's happening. And so the story that I'm going to tell here about working with the Earth to manifest is last year I was doing this Earth ritual last summer, back exactly a year from now, actually, is when I started doing this ritual. And I'd never grown anything from seed before, and I decided to purchase French marigold seeds and use those seeds for the ritual. And I was planting 4 things. I was planting my true yang, my true yin, cosmic surrender, and basically like my true emotional flow, because none of those were quite online. They were all in shadow, they were all being interrupted, and this Earth ritual was to begin to kind of reestablish that territory of true emotion, cosmic surrender, yin-yang flow, all of that good stuff. And through that Earth ritual, kind of ask the Earth to help me cultivate those things, and then I would just continue to water them and watch them grow and put in my work elsewhere as well and see what happened. And so the first thing that happened was a lot of fear. I mean, I got all the supplies ready. I really didn't want to get dirty. I don't like bugs. I've gotten, in the past year, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with the Earth in general and my wildness and nature. At that time, it was like Spirit was kind of trying to push me off the starting block and get me to go into the Earth. And so even just like having these seeds and putting them in a pot, right? 4 different plants. I think I used 2 pots, right? Was like a lot of dirt for me. And it was like 100-degree weather. I was outside planting these things, and I bought these little paper seedling cups, right? And I put seeds in 4 of them, and then I set these seedlings on this outside table that was glass, right? Like not thinking about the fact that glass gets super, super hot from the sun. So a few days passed by, and of course I'm like nervously checking the seeds every single day, wondering if things are going to sprout. I didn't have a lot of I had a lot of faith in what I was doing. I had a lot of faith in what I was cultivating and what I was doing around that and the spirits themselves. I did not have a lot of faith in my ability to get these seeds to sprout, to be honest. And so going into this was and this is important too, is the risk factor, is I was putting my heart, I really was putting my heart and my full intention into these seeds, and there was a chance that they weren't going to grow, right? And that's the big portion of this. I think many times people don't want to get off that starting block because it does require risk. It requires risk of heart if what you're doing really matters, right? And that's key. That feeling of risk and worry is key. You need that. If you're not feeling that, then why are you doing it? Why, you know, it wouldn't matter to you. And so that fear, that worry, that risk taking is essential, right? So that's number one. A few days pass and these seedlings are just like sitting on this glass table outside, right? And it's getting too hot, and they're starting to the soil itself is like starting to mold. It's starting to collect mold. The cups are like getting rotten on the bottom, which I didn't notice at first because I hadn't lifted them, right? And then it kind of occurred to me, I was like, okay, when I checked on them and I saw kind of mold like kind of gathering around the outside of the paper cup, I was like, okay, I have a problem here. So I had to repot them, and so I threw them in, you know, the bigger like ceramic pots or whatever, 2 of them, and had to get dirty again and like deal with that grossness, right? And of course now I'm just like super worried that the seeds aren't going to grow. I was like, I hope that no like version of rot or whatever like got to these seeds. I hope it wasn't too hot underneath, you know. I was very concerned. And it was a little late in the season also. It wasn't spring, you know, so I was like, is it just going to be too hot for these flowers to grow anyway? But anyway, I moved them into the pots, and so it's sort of like, you know, the first like little hurdle or challenge or whatever showed up to kind of show me what I was doing wrong, right? And then I put in the work to fix that. And believe it or not, I think it might have been the next, maybe not the next day, but like a few days into this, they all started sprouting more than I even imagined. It was just marigolds like fucking city, right? Out of these pots. And the relief that came with that was so incredible. And I also felt really touched because I've owned, you know, I've had lots of animals. I have a rabbit, obviously, who I'm sure you've heard a bunch of if you've been on this channel for a while. But I've never, like, not since I was a kid anyway, as an adult, I've never had, at that time I hadn't had like a particular affinity for plants. I do now. They've grown on me. But at that time it really wasn't a part of my life. And so I was so deeply touched by having grown this from seed that it kind of fundamentally changed me. I mean, ritual aside, just growing a flower from seed fundamentally changed me. So the way that the earth changes you when you start working with it to manifest is incredible, because what the earth is really doing is when you are seeding that manifestation from the air, you have your vision, right? You're seeding it into the ground, you're planting it. The earth is saying, okay, now we need to teach you how to be who you need to be able to meet what you're trying to manifest head on. Like, in order for this to truly manifest, here is who you need to be. And so the earth is really this cultivation of character, this preparing you for what's to come, right? And even though earth is like the slowest moving element, it's like the more that you do, the more that you work with the earth, the faster things start to happen. And so it really is like a growth relationship with the earth. And so this is where your manifestation starts to grow. Because as you're growing, as your character is changing through, or at least as mine did, as my character was changing through this process of growth, these marigolds were also growing. Of course, they were symbolic. They were representational of my emotions, my yin-yang flow, and my ability to surrender to that flow. But they also became their own entity. There was a certain point where it's not like I made the separation necessarily. The marigolds were always going to be extra special to me because of what they represented. But at a certain point, I was just taking care of flowers, you know? And that's an important piece too, is like the letting go and doing the work and finding the love in the work itself, because it's part of the manifestation. You're not just, like, yes, you're trying to manifest your end goal and your vision, but that doesn't mean that the process isn't equally enriching. And if you really are waiting for outcome all the time, you'll miss the current moment, and then the outcome just keeps not arriving. You know what I mean? Because you're not here living it. As I said last week, you're manifesting constantly. You're always manifesting all the time, right? So this current moment right now is the outcome of a previous manifestation. And so you could choose to show up right now and celebrate that outcome, or you could just keep waiting for the next one, and that story never ends. You know what I mean? So the earth really teaches you how to be here now, to be present with the work, with the process. And through that process, you're able to actually let go of the outcome because you're feeling the manifestation through the work. And so it already feels like it's here. And it was. The flowers are growing, right? And as these flowers are growing, I'm fundamentally changing inside. Not just because of these flowers, because I'm doing all this other work around the cultivation of this, right? That's true. And I'm seeing this symbolic growth as well as I'm putting in my own work by just doing my practices and choosing to show up every day for myself and become the person that I was trying to become through these. Of course, this example is like all me, so like true yin, true yang flow, that's an inside job. Emotional flow, that's an inside job. Surrender, that's an inside job. And you don't necessarily have to do that. You could have a real concrete goal in mind for this kind of ritual or not. It really doesn't matter. This is just what I was putting it through at this moment because my concern was being the person that I needed to be to do what came next. And so it's sort of like I had visions for the future, but let's take care of the first vision, which is me, right? And that's what I do with my clients as well, is like, let's square you away first so that when you commit yourself to your vision, you're committing yourself to your true vision, basically. And so this was it for me, was let's clarify the true vision by planting this first vision first. Who do I want to be? Somebody in good energetic balance, somebody that flows with their emotions in life, somebody that is surrendered to the cosmos so that I can receive what I need to receive to do my work in the world, which is really requires setting aside ego, that surrender piece. I mean, I needed help. I needed help doing it. Okay. So it's important to understand that the earth is also a network, right? It's the second on our list. The air comes first, but this planting of the seed, right, is phase 2, and that takes place on the earth, which hosts all of it. All the water that we're aware of is hosted by the earth. The air itself is in the atmosphere that's hosted by the earth. Yes, it kind of goes into ether, which is spirit, but we haven't talked about that yet, really. But that's not separate from the earth either, because the only way that we can experience anything in incarnate bodies is on this earth right now, having this experience, right? And so, the heat of the sun, yes, the sun representing fire is kind of outside of the earth, but the way that the earth retains the heat from the sun on the earth itself and the atmosphere so that we can live on it and feel warm, the earth is doing that too. So while these elements are so much bigger than just the earth itself, our experience of these elements harbored on this planet are really our only experience of them. We can't have an experience outside of that as human beings. And so the earth is a network. It hosts all of it. And so, so I'm watching these plants grow out of these pots, right? And it's starting to turn into fall. And they're making it through the fall, but it's starting to get too cold, and they're not really good indoor plants. So it's basically it's harvest time because I know the flowers are going to die. I was told, I don't remember the research I did, but I was told by another person that marigolds don't come back, that you have to plant them seasonally, so I needed to harvest the seeds and just plant them next year, right? So I did that. I did a big harvest for all of the seeds, but I didn't necessarily get all of them because there were so many. And of course, a lot of the seeds, some of the flowers had kind of already started to die, and a lot of the seeds had been blown to the wind already. And the rest of them kind of were when I was kind of done harvesting them. I still have those seeds harvested in a little coffee container, right, that I haven't messed with at all since last year. And I also moved house. So I moved basically into this property that has this ecosystem all of its own. The backyard is huge. It kind of goes into the forest. There are tons of insects and bugs and like insects I've never seen before. Tons of butterflies, bees that don't mess with us. There's like coyote that wanders around. There's groundhogs. There is like a whole ass ecosystem here. And there's also, like I've made portals here, but there are already portals here. So this is kind of like a super highway where spirit meets the earth here. And so the land spirits here are very active. And I can tell how the land spirits impact the land because the land here is just so fruitful. When we first moved in, it was already beautiful. I feel like the more that we settle in and root here on this property, the more that nature realizes that we're not a threat, that the nature here realizes that we're just going to let them do what they do. And so it's sort of like the wildness has started to come out. And the longer that we stay here, the more these land spirits and the plants and animal life here, have a relationship with me and communicate with me. And the more that I feel like I am part of their ecosystem, right? As trust is built and the ability to communicate is built over time. And so now I have these potted marigolds, right, that died, and they just stayed in the outdoor pots all year, being non-existent. And then spring comes around, and all of my French marigolds just start blossoming out of the ground. Like the seeds from the pot just were blown from the wind, basically, I would assume, into the ground, and a lot of them were able to seed deep enough into the ground on their own without me even attempting anything. And rooted and started growing. And so now I've got this giant patch of just wild marigolds just in the yard. In the yard. I didn't do anything. And I did not know that was going to happen because I was informed that it wasn't going to, right? That they weren't going to come back. And now I see that they've actually seeded themselves, right? And so now I've got this giant spread of marigolds, just marigolds as far as I can see, right? That came out of these just four seeds that I planted. And as I'm starting to see all these marigolds bloom and crop up everywhere, I'm like, okay, well, let's check in. How do I feel? Well, completely different. I have this relationship with the land now. I have this relationship with the marigolds. They're seeding themselves, so I don't have to do the work, right? I put in the effort initially. Of course, they get watered and watched and loved or whatever. But, they took on their own momentum and they did their own work at a certain point. And that's what happens when you do that initial work and you're consistent with it, is things start to carry themselves and spread. And that's what the earth is so good at. It's slower moving, but the growth is sustainable because of the roots, right? And this spread starts to happen. And that's partly the community piece that I was talking about, where everything is in relationship to each other with the earth. So it's not like I did this alone. I asked the spirits for help when I planted them initially. I asked the land spirits for help in just, maintaining this land every single day. My mom tends the garden. I do what I can to be as respectful as I possibly can for this land. Part of my plan here is I just want to leave this land better than I found it, because I'm not going to be here for super long, now that things are moving forward in the world again. And so as I observe this garden that I'm in day to day, I just think about the fact that all of this power that I'm experiencing very viscerally, it just seems to come from love. From the fact that we as human beings that live in this house, that live on this property, are holding space for the nature here to just be what it is. And that gives the natural life in my yard all the safety and freedom to just be wild, to do what it does, and then remarkable things start to happen. And so the earth represents the community that is watching those seeds, because it wasn't just me. It's me, it's the animals, it's the other plants. I have a snake plant that's obviously an indoor plant, and I let her just kind of sit outside for hours at a time because she asks, because once I started doing that with her and it got warmer, she started growing much more quickly, and I had to actually repot her recently. And it's like not much different exposure to sunlight, because I still keep her underneath the patio so she doesn't get direct sunlight. But it's the fact that when she's out there, she is in community with all of this other life, and I think that's what's helping her grow. That's what I think is happening. So she's become my teacher because of the other land spirits here, right? Teaching her, and that's a beautiful thing. And so then the seeds themselves, the seeds of your intention, of your manifestation, right? They're being nourished by the earth when you plant them. They're establishing roots. They're being encouraged to be born. And out of that love and that trust and that community support, one day you see that first stem shoot up from the seed, right? And that's fire, and we'll talk about that later. So using the earth to manifest, I would say that if you just need to cultivate your relationship with it, that I would do the same thing that I did when I had no relationship, really, is plant things, grow things, put your manifestations and your intentions into the seeds that you plant. If you can't grow things outside, or you can't grow things from seed, or you're just afraid to, or you can't grow things, period, just get a cactus. Get a cactus or a succulent that's already exists, and just give it a shot. Put your intentions, manifestations in that, and nurture it to the best of your ability. You can also, I talked about an air shrine last week. You can make an earth shrine the same way with a power object, just like the air. My power object is a giant rock that formed in the earth's mantle, that has peridot in it, which are like these green gemstones. They're beautiful. And I think that's partly representation of green, is obviously like kind of the nature color. It's also the color of the heart, if we're talking about like the chakra system, which I do work through the chakra system. So that's what green represents to me. And, you know, the earth is the heart of our incarnate experience. The earth is our mother. We cannot be here without her. And so when you work with the earth, it has to have heart and meaning for you, true heart and meaning. And if you feel like you couldn't like water these seeds with your own like blood, sweat, and tears, then what's the point? You know, like, why do it? And that's kind of what the earth might ask you. I mean, the earth demands that we be in our integrity when we work with her, right? And part of that integrity is the fact that if things really matter to you, there's risk, there's fear that it won't work out, there's doubt, right? And that's just part of it. Like, if you don't feel that thrill, if you don't feel that fear, that worry, right? It's kind of like sending your child off for the school day, maybe, or off with their friends, and, you know, you're a young child, and you just think, oh, what's gonna happen? You know, it's the same thing. So ask yourself, you know, because you have to put in the work, you have to plant the seeds, right? It doesn't take long to plant seeds. You need a pot, you need soil, you need whatever, you know, it doesn't take long. You gotta get a little bit dirty. You gotta be careful. You gotta really think about what you're doing. You gotta put your love into it. And then as you're doing all that, you know, then you can ask yourself, is this good enough? Like, is it worth the work? Because you wouldn't do it otherwise. And that's a really good indication. If you're willing to put in the work, that's a good indication that you're on the right track in terms of like what your vision really is. Because is it worth the risk of your time? And the risk, you know, is it worth the risk of your time? Is it worth the risk of your effort? Is it worth the risk of your patience? Because you can always try again. If the first plant doesn't work out, I just thought, you know, if those first seedlings don't work out, no problem, I'll just try again. I bought a bunch of seeds, right? And so I was aware of that, but I also loved the ones that I was cultivating, you know, and I wanted them to stay alive, and they did. But sometimes it is about attempt number 2, attempt number 3, attempt number 4. Your manifestation will work. Manifestation works. But that doesn't necessarily mean it works tomorrow. It maybe means that you fail 4 times first before it works. You know what I mean? So you have to be willing to risk that time, effort, and energy. You have to be willing to be patient, to be with the unknown while you're just waiting for those seeds to crop out of the ground and you don't know if they're going to do it, right? I mean, everyone wants to just have whatever they want, right, without working for it. And the earth says bullshit. If the desire doesn't sustain itself through time, then it's not your true vision. Like Earth is just kind of the big test, because it's partly why I do it before I do fire, because fire says gimme, 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 and Earth says, wait a minute, are you sure that this is what you want? Right? So some manifestation teachers will say, and also this comes out of like the secret a bit in the law of attraction, is that, you know, as long as you are fully focusing, affirming, and stating your manifestations and trusting that they're real, and you don't have to do anything else. I disagree. Not because I think that conceptually they're wrong, but because I think conceptually they're correct in that if you really fully believe in your manifestation, opportunities are going to come to you for you to take. That's true, right? You're gonna attract the right opportunity through the manifestation affirmation work that you do, whatever it is. maybe it's just easier for you to get up and do it, so you don't have to think about it. I mean, one of my common manifestations that I script out right now is like, I'm so thankful that I always have the motivation to work out, right? Because for a while I was just writing, my perfect body, my ideal body is what I was writing down, and I was seeing it happen. It's like I'm not like at the ideal yet, but I keep getting closer. I keep hitting these points, and it's great. And I also hit a little patch where I just didn't want to work out, right? And so my solution was, instead of looking at my end result outside of me, let's look at my motivation and whatever. So I started manifesting my own motivation. And so then working out stopped feeling like work, but I was still doing the work. It doesn't matter if it feels like work or not. You just need to do it, whatever whatever it is. And so like, while they're right, it's also, it's like you need to take action. You can't just let something fall in your lap. Because the universe is trying to get things to you, and the more you can get the more you put in the work to get yourself there too, the quicker, the easier, etc. I've noticed that spirit just does not like to waste energy. So if it feels like you are a waste of time and energy, nothing's gonna happen. The second you get off the starting block, the universe goes, oh, okay, let's get closer then. The second you get closer again, it's like, oh, okay. And so if you treat it like a dance, like you are attracting the thing that you're wanting to manifest, and it's attracting you, right? And you're coming to each other together and converging. That's the gold right there. So it's not like you have to work past your threshold. It's not like you have to work 60 hours a week. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying fuck everything else. Just put in the work until your goal is done like a maniac. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that if you do nothing, nothing will happen. If you do something, something will happen. And that's a big teaching of the earth. And so, just plant something. Have a conversation with the earth, set up a little shrine, even just going for a walk in nature and asking the nature spirits there, or the trees or whatever, questions, or just connecting in any way that you can, no matter where you are. If you feel like you can't communicate with them in that way, then you can just like touch the earth, touch a tree, do the kinesthetic thing. Get yourself in your body, because this is about grounding too. Really hard to manifest anything if you're not grounded, and this is a really good way to get into your body, to be fully embodied, is to learn how the earth operates. Because animals, plants, trees, whatever, they can't separate themselves from their bodies like we can. Like, our minds can kind of float above our heads and do their thing, and we can ignore our bodies. It's really unhealthy, but we can do it. And the more that you work with the earth, the more absurd that starts to feel, and the more you kind of start to naturally integrate and embody yourself. So that's another thing too, is that your body really is the instrument of God. And if you don't like the word God, don't use it. Your body is the instrument of spirit, or the instrument of power, or the channeler, right? And your mind is God. Your mind is the one who is aware, the one who visions, the one who envisions, the one who has the vision, the one who speaks that vision, right? So your mind is speaking that, and then your body is taking that energy and moving it, channeling it through your body and into the world. And so that channeling is what we're really doing. You can kind of picture it as like the seed is falling from the sky through your head, planting in your heart, and then from your heart it moves out into the world. That's energetically what's happening. So yeah, so let's root in this week. Let's set up some shrines. Let's talk to the earth. Let's plant some seeds. And it's not about putting in the most work. It's not about putting in the most effort. It's not about perfection. It's just about, if you want to get a seed into the ground, you have to pick up that seed and put it in the ground. And that's it. That's just one thing. It's not, it takes it's like 10 minutes of your day. So, don't exaggerate what doing the work really means. I feed my rabbit every day. I put in the work to keep her alive every day, and that requires with some petting and like putting some food in a bowl. It's 5 minutes of my time to put food in a bowl. It's not effort, but it is action and it's work. It's the doing. So yes, so earth, taking action, being patient, being in community. And community can mean the people around you. Like, in terms of where I am now, community obviously includes my family, who I'm living with, but community includes all of the animals here, all the plants here, the land itself, the earth herself, all of the helping spirits that have helped me get to this point, right? Because I did not manifest alone. I asked for my manifestations from spirit, and they both met me halfway and helped me to do the things that I needed to do to meet them halfway. You know, this is all a network. So community, patience, being with the unknown, and we're going to talk about this when we move into water next. But also, you know, that point in time where that seed is in the earth, but you cannot see it, you don't know what it's doing, you still got to water it. You still got to put in the work, even though you haven't seen the results of that work. So consistency, patience, being with the unknown, risk-taking, healthy risk-taking, taking action, creating a foundation, being in community. These are all earth aspects. And the community aspect is important because nobody does anything in a vacuum. If you want to manifest, you need help. Even if it's not from another human being, you are still getting more help than you even know. Okay? So, so keep that in mind. I think that's all I'm going to say now. Please let me know if you have questions. I know that this is a lot. And I will try to answer them. Leave a comment. Let me know how this was for you. Subscribe if you want to see the next video. And I will see you guys next week when we will move into water. Yeah, I'll see you then.